G'day, I'm Mark from Self-Sufficient Meat. In this video, I'm going to take you guys on a full veggie garden walk around. That's right, a complete tour of the whole patch. Every raised garden bed, what's growing in it now, and what might be growing in it in the future. Let's get into it. This tour is going to also include the side wall where we've got a whole bunch of potted plants. Anyway, let's start right here. I want to show you this. It's corn growing in the lawn. So I'm going to call it corn in the lawn. The reason why I think this is a really good experiment is because corn has come up self-seeded. It probably grew in one of these raised beds here, and then when I harvested it, some of the corn seed fell onto the ground here. But it's winter time and corn doesn't usually grow very well, let alone competing with other grasses in the middle of the lawn there. So I've cordoned it off so that we don't run over it in the lawnmower, and I want to see how it goes. I gave it a bit of fertilizer, I gave it some love. We're going to give it some extra water and see if we can get any cobs off them. Okay, we might as well start right at this raised bed here. Garlic. This garlic was bought from the store and it started sprouting, and I thought, why not give it a go, even though it's probably not going to grow too well. It was a large garlic, it looked like a glen. They can grow glen garlic inland from here where it's not as humid. Anyway, it seems to be going okay. There's a little bit of rust on the leaves, but we'll see how it goes. At the back here is a large tomato plant, and this tomato plant has a story as well. I actually found a volunteer up where our herb garden is, and I pulled it out of the ground. It had a very long stem that already had some roots coming off it, and I thought, why not layer that and see if I can grow a stronger tomato plant than usual and make a bit of an experiment. And it is growing really well. Very strong looking plant. This next bed here, I've got the straw garden experiment going on. We've had a bit of a setback. Sadly, the cockatoos have come in, and this was going really well. The potatoes that I had planted in this straw bed, no soil experiment, except for compost, but you don't technically call that soil. They started sprouting, and I'll show you close up. See this here? The cockatoos come in, and what they do is they just gnaw. They just do it for fun. They don't eat it. They just gnaw off your plants and then laugh at you as they sit up in the trees. That was some really good high plants, and they just got all gnawed off. In the next bed here, we've got the Everglades tomatoes. I've been growing them in this bed for several years now, and they never fail. I've got a bit of dill coming up here, a little bit of dill. The Everglades, if I can find some, are just a really small tomato. They don't get much bigger than that, but of course they go red. And you don't have to stake them. And in this final bed up at the front, I have got some large tomatoes here, and this is quite interesting. I actually bought them this size. They are called a anise. An ananas newer. And yeah, bit of an interesting name, isn't it? I'm sure you can pronounce that better than I did, but I've never grown them before. So that's the reason that I bought them as plants, seedlings, fairly mature ones, is because we're getting late in the season now. So I wanted to get ahead. And the other reason is I've never grown that type before. It's an heirloom variety, and I've never seen the seeds for sale online. So I thought I might as well buy the plants, get that head start, because the season's already well into it before summer hits, and the tomatoes, especially the large ones, are impossible to grow. And then I can collect the seeds from them and then keep regrowing them anyway. I'm going to grow these tomatoes up here, similar to how I did that cucumber one, where I grew the Lebanese cucumbers up this lean-to trellis, saving space on this bed. And in the background there you can see that magnificent Japanese mustard. Have a crack at it, would you? Isn't it gorgeous? Now, the leaves, like being a mustard, is fairly pungent. So that's the negative. But I have pickled the stems before, and they do pickle up quite nicely. I think you'd want a sweeter pickle than what I did though. So I think in the future I'll try pickling again, but I will pickle them in a much sweeter solution, and we'll see if we can get them more palatable for the rest of the family. But it's just a beautiful plant to have in the veggie garden anyway. And look, if you like this type of thing, it's great in a salad too, or of course stir fry. What I'll do is we'll go and start from the left hand side as you look at it of the garden beds, so that I don't have that sun behind me. That way you can see me better, and also you can see the beds better without getting shaded out. This first bed here, the next one behind, I've got some Congo potatoes growing in here, a whole mass of them. Now, those Congo potatoes are sort of long, thin. They're like finger type potatoes. I just can't remember the name of the main one that I'm thinking of, except they're dark purple, and obviously probably coming from the Congo region. That's why they're so hardy, and just not the normal. So it's probably grown there for a reason, as good sustenance in that type of area. Harsh climate, that type of thing. But I've grown them before, and this is the seed potato for the next season that I kept. And I've got a story behind this of where I kept those potatoes, and it was actually in the fridge to make them last longer, and it worked a treat. Coming along here to the next bed is more garlic, and this is another garlic experiment. It's divided into thirds, so there's 3 different types of garlic that I'm trialing for our climate in this area, and I want to see which one grows best. At the moment, there doesn't seem to be a heck of a lot of difference between any of them. But you can see here, see this damage? Again, that's cockatoo damage, chewed off from the base, and then just thrown all over the place for fun. They're not eating it, just want to ruin things. There's another one gone. I don't know if that'll be able to have time to repair itself. In the next bed down, there looks like there's nothing in it, but there is. It's a purple yam that's under here, a large purple yam. And that is dormant at the moment. You might be able to see. See that? There's some nut grass. See that? That there? So it's like sweet potato. I have never tried it. That's why I'm growing it. It grows really well. I gave it 1 season. It's dormant now. It'll come good in summer again, and it grows like a large vine. And then, so this trellis is good for that. And then I will try it, and we'll cook something up with it and see how it goes. If you want to see a recipe on it, Celia, our website editor, she actually grew it at her place. I got this from her, and she's made a recipe on our website in the recipe section. Just go searching for purple yam on our website and you should find that. Starting back again on the 3rd level in, we've got these thin, long, thin raised garden beds. This one here has one very large globe artichoke. It's beautiful, it's looking fantastic. It hasn't come out yet, it hasn't started to flower or bud. so that you collect the buds to eat. But this bed really needs a bit of work because it's sunken right down, but because it's growing so well in here, I've decided just to leave it for now, and once this dies back in the next coming spring, summer, mainly summer, then I will refill this bed up and perhaps dig this up carefully and then replant it. Moving along, this is a bit of a mismatch in this bed here. There's spinach growing. It's sort of an overflow of spinach that I had that I planted in here as seedlings. What used to be in this space were strawberries, but I've replanted those strawberries. I wanted to get them out of here and fill up a few gaps in these barrels. And I ended up getting, I reckon, 30, 40 plants. And so I've spread the strawberries out. I needed to top up some of these barrels. They were getting old and some of the strawberry plants had died. And so that's what I did. I topped the barrels up, and then I transplanted every strawberry that I had in here, and I put them in these barrels, and the raised bed over there and another one over here that we'll get to soon. But moving up further, we've got this rocket that is going to seed, and I want it to go to seed so I can collect the seeds. There it is flowering here. And then this garlic chives. Oh, it's really a great substitute for regular garlic because it actually is quite pungent, and you definitely notice the flavour. You could make a garlic bread just with this herb. I'm not kidding. I reckon you could, and it'll be just as good. I'd saute it probably first and then put it on your garlic bread with butter, and everyone would love it. But the reason I like growing it is garlic, this type of garlic here, is difficult to grow. I wish it did grow really easy in our climate, but it just doesn't. But this does grow easy. It suffers a little bit through summer, but it's an all-round herb. It still grows all year round, and that's what I look for in plants, especially in a subtropical climate where you can grow things all year round, but you can't grow the same things. Not everything grows all year round. A lot of things die back in winter, some things die back in summer. You can grow some things at different times of the year, whereas there are some gem plants, and it's usually the herbs, that will grow all year round and supply you with food and flavour all year round, and this is one of them, garlic chives, and that's why I like having plenty of them in the garden. This here is a row of potato onions. Now I'm going to do a video on potato onions. At this stage I've got to look up why they call it a potato onion, because they don't taste like potatoes, but they are a bunching, bulbing onion. So you should be able to get like good medium-sized onions out of these, and I've grown them before, and they actually do multiply really well in a season. They don't take up a lot of space, and they're good for container growing as well, and just one per pot type thing. This bed here, there's a little bit of sweet potato popping up. That's just a self-seeder. I probably won't leave that in there, but I did have turmeric in here, so I'm just leaving this turmeric out to harden off in the sun a bit. But what I might do is we'll harvest some of this and eat it and pickle it, and the rest we'll plant back in here and turn this into a turmeric bed come summer. In this first round raised garden bed here, which isn't a birdie's, this is a galvanized knockoff. I've got some lettuce. This is a cos lettuce around the outside, and in here is some potatoes. And I'm going to see how those potatoes go. I decided to grow lettuce around the outside so at least get a double use out of this bed. So double cropping, it's always a good thing if you can double crop. The Three Sisters is the most famous one, where you grow corn, then you grow beans up the corn, and in the base of the garden bed you have a squash or a pumpkin or something like that grow, and they call that the Three Sisters. Well, if that's just maximising the space of your garden, and they all work together. In this case, the lettuce doesn't really work with the potatoes, but while the lettuce will grow, the potatoes haven't even come up through yet. So what will happen is the lettuce will grow first. At least we'll get a crop out of that around the outside. It won't impede the potatoes coming up. And when the potatoes coming up and they're full size, the lettuce, it'll be finished by then, and we would have harvested it all and then just wait for the potatoes to die back and then start harvesting them. I've already talked a bit about these barrels and the new strawberries that we've put in. I'm just trialling this tamarello in a small container in the middle of the veggie garden. I've grown tamarellos a lot. Unfortunately, it's always been out in the orchard over there. And when you grow them in clay, they're like an avocado. They'll grow for a while and might even start fruiting and that, but once the roots get established, they just wilt and die off. So I thought I'd trial it here in a container. Strawberries in a barrel. Look at that. Well, there's no comparison to this, small, medium-sized strawberry compared to a big, juicy one from the supermarket. This is so much sweeter and better. God, getting the strawberry growing, even just 1 or 2 a day is fantastic. It's just such a treat. This little pot here full of weeds and a bit of sweet potato. I don't know why I keep that going. It's just that it had some massive growth in it, and I think I'll probably harvest that very soon, probably before summer, and we'll see what type of mongrel tuber is in the base of that. But it just keeps on growing year after year, and I don't even fertilize the thing. At one stage it took over this whole area, the plant did, coming out. Next to it we've got some more chives, garlic chives, and in the middle is verbena. Beautiful herb, verbena, but it does die back in winter. So I've cut it back and I'll let it grow out from the center here, and it'll have those garlic chives around the center rather than just a one sort of stringy verbena plant. You might notice this here, and that you might be able to hear the buzz. This is our EnviroCycle, so we don't have a normal town septic runoff system going to the public system. We have everything kept in-house, which I love, because all the waste that comes from the house goes into this area, and I'm happy to have our veggie garden centered around it. It does 2 things. The first thing is it hides the unsightliness of this in the backyard, because it looks a bit unsightly from the back deck. Yeah, you got your, well, what are these concrete things here? Well, they're our septic. So it's not a nice view from the back deck. So that's one thing. And the second thing is not really what the veggie garden does for this, but what the EcoCycle does for the garden, and that is the hose that pumps out the treated water. It pumps it out. At the moment I've got them down the back there because we've had plenty of water here, and I just wanted to get them away from the fruit trees at this point, so it's just pumping into the grass. But through summer, where you need that extra water, especially in the fruit trees, well, then all this waste water that would otherwise just go into, town waste and pumped out to sea is going back into our garden. And it does a great job of fertilizing, helping to sort of a minimum bit of fertilizer for the trees too. So I just love it. And there's nothing yucky about having your septic system and growing food around it. You just shouldn't be watering your veggies or salad crops in particular with wastewater. That's just not a good thing to do, because that can harbour bacteria and build up bacteria in the leaves and that type of thing. But actually having the veggie garden sited central around this stuff, give it a bit of a hide from up above and just make the area look prettier, is a good idea, and it's not a health hazard, so to speak. I just wanted to clear that up. And the last bed here, we've got some cauliflower, strawberries around the outside. They're going to be more of a permanent perennial crop. We've got a tree lettuce or celtus in the middle. That was just a self-seeder like that one is there. They just come up randomly and I'll pick them out and put them back into the garden. And that one, being a tree lettuce, will grow right up here. Though it does look like a cos, doesn't it, at the moment? We'll see. I've got some chilies in this bed here that are dormant and they look pretty yucky. They'll come good in spring. And then we've got this passion fruit here that you might have seen in my videos. This was supposed to be a real giant passion fruit. I found out that it was just a normal common golden passion fruit that the birds drop all over the place and the vines grow everywhere. It's very prolific, but still is a very nice passion fruit to eat, but it's not a giant. Sometimes you get bigger ones, and I explained that in that scam video that I did the other day. But it's growing well, especially through winter, which they tend to suffer a bit. More strawberries here in this raised garden bed. And here I've got some taro, which none are sprouting at the moment because it's winter. But I've replanted taro, and in the middle, here's some butter, well, what do they call it? Butterleaf lettuce. I can't remember the exact name of it, but these came up as self-seeding over here because I had lettuce in that bed last year and let it go to seed, and I found a few of the seedlings coming up, so I've just planted them in here just to fill up a bit of space, because again it's a bit like what I was doing over here with the potatoes. While the taro's settling in and only going to start sprouting around spring summer, the lettuce then can grow in this bed and produce a crop before they start growing and shading the lettuce out. In this middle bed here, if you watch my videos quite a bit, you'd know that I had a Thai basil in here, big Thai basil bush. Well, we finally got rid of that, and I found some seedlings growing up at our herb garden, and I decided to take the seedlings out from there and transplant them here in this bed. So there's about 8 or 9 parsley plants in there that I hope will just take off and grow a nice big parsley herb bed there. And the next one over is strawberries, that I grew strawberries in here last season. I transplanted some new ones in here, so we've got plenty of strawberries. And this last bed here in the middle is mint. The mint's growing very well. I've given it a little bit of extra fertilizer and some rock dust in there, but what I really should do, especially next season when this dies out in summer, it goes dormant practically through the middle of summer, and then it comes good again in the cooler months. It's looking great, but it would look even better if I pulled it all up when it gets dormant and I took out all the matted and old root stock and all the old vine type stuff that's matted in there, and gave it a bit of a shake up, put some new soil in, gave it a bit of extra fertilizer, and then transplanted it back in. We'd get a much better crop than that, and a much better looking bed. So I'll do that this next coming season rather than now when it's fully in full bloom. And this final bed here, well, I've got nothing in there except it's just sitting some potatoes on there. There's some sweet potato that's trying to come up through here. There's some sweet potato as well that we've picked or harvested. So not a lot going in here. For now, I'll just leave it rest and I'll think about what I might put in there. For now, it's sort of like a storage area. starting at the back of these 4 raised garden beds. Can't see much of action along here. This is our taro bed, and it's been growing taro for a few seasons in here now. Basically the taro is dormant because of winter, and these will all start sprouting again in summer. All I've done is dug it all up, refurbished the bed, gave it some fertilizer and some rock minerals, and then I transplanted and spaced them all out. So you'll get taro, it'll grow in clumps. You can harvest and then eat your bigger ones, and the littler ones and some of the stalks even, you can transplant them back in for the next season. It's a very cut and come again type of starch. Yeah, it's a really good crop to grow, especially in the warmer climate. And it's why it's so popular in the islands and all that, because it's very hardy. It's also full of sustenance and energy. So it's a great accompaniment to a protein or something like that. So that's what's growing in this bed. This next bed here is just resting at this stage. I'm not sure what I might put in it. This one here, I think it's this one, or it might be this one. I've got to check, but one of these two, I think it's that one. I buried some fish waste in there about 6 weeks ago, and I did a short, and it actually got quite a lot of traction. It went semi-viral, which is nice. But there were quite a lot of negative comments in there too. That's fine, people can have their own opinion. I buried them in here, so I don't want to put anything in there because I want to do a follow-up video in 3 months and just show what happened to all that fish waste that I buried in that trench. And then I can maybe start planting something in that bed. This next bed along, I think I might plant a bit of a potato off, experiment again. Some of these store-bought potatoes that have gone green that you can't eat, instead of throwing them away, I like to regrow them, versus some of these Nicola that are seed potatoes from the nursery. So what I might do is half the bed and grow them side by side and see which one does the best. I've got some marigolds here, and I've got some more asparagus. These are asparagus crowns, and I'll show you what I'm going to do with them soon when we get down to those areas. On this side you'll see these are peas. These are Spanish peas. They're very long type of telegraph pea, and they're actually supposed to be one of the best peas in the world. They're certainly one of the most expensive to buy fresh, and it's one of the reasons why I wanted to grow it, because I found out that these are expensive to buy for various reasons, and I'll cover that in a video when I do it. So I thought, you know what, I'll buy a packet of seed for $2.50. I'll grow, a ton of them and save myself a whole lot of money eating a delicacy. Keeping on going down, there's all these nasturtiums. I'm growing them mainly for the bees. I know you can eat them. I don't like them. They're really peppery and pungent, but they do look pretty, and you can put the flowers in salads and stuff. But like I said, I'm not real keen on them, but I do like how they grow, and they make a great compost. They're really good as a broken down compost, adding it to your compost bins as that greenery that you sometimes need. It's like lawn clippings, it's very valuable. And of course they look beautiful and they attract the bees. And now that we've got a big beehive down the back, well then, why not grow some flowers and attract them and help them out? So yeah, all along here, they are growing from the raised bed. They've just cascaded over, and I'm trying to keep them away from the actual vegetables that are growing in the raised beds. Now, starting from the back here, these 2 small herb raised beds from Birdies, they are growing cauliflower, 1 in each, 1 big plant in each. And then I think we'll start with, we might as well go here first. You You might have seen me refurbish. If you've seen the video of me refurbishing this and sticking these posts in and holding this all together, my terrible DIY efforts. Well, it's working, and most importantly, it's growing a lot of great produce. And I love how this is above waist height for me. It's so easy to weed and look after. So on this right hand side, we're growing some, these are sugarloaf cabbage, tomatoes that are going to grow up, and then they're going to start cascading over. More cabbage. Intertwined is some lettuce. I'll probably harvest that today and eat it, but I have been harvesting and pulling them off, and then they're regrowing. So that's a bit of cos there. More cabbage, more lettuce and cabbage, more tomato. You can see how they are starting to now go through the mesh. I've trained them up through the mesh, and they're falling over now. When they start, they're flowering, and when they start to fruit, the fruit will be hanging through. That's the idea. We've got beautiful lettuce along here that I've been harvesting for the last month or so. This one here looks like it's going to seed. There's another tomato that's doing the same trick. More lettuce along this side. This is a tomato I need to tie up before it breaks. And then on this other side, I've mirrored the cauliflower in here. We've got spinach. We've got some type of choy, a pak choy there, I think it is. Tomatoes, iceberg lettuce that's starting to go to heart. Very difficult to grow iceberg in the subtropics. You've only got this winter window to grow it in, and if you don't get it right, it'll just rot. Over the back here, a bit of bok choy, or no, that's the bok choy over there. I can't remember what this is called, but it's an Asian choy, which is leaf. Tomato that I need to train up. I'll trim that back, and then I'll start training that up. There's the bok choy. Here's some radicchio. I love radicchio. The rest of the family's not keen on it, but I like that bitter type salad crop. The Italian bitterness, I really do like it. Here's some leftover, just some spare potato onions. These two are yet to sprout. They might be buggered, might have rotted. These two are coming along okay. More tomatoes, radicchio, and these are baby cabbage. These are pretty much almost right to go, these ones. They don't get much bigger than this. Aren't they gorgeous? Squash, more squash. More tomato, radicchio. This is a zucchini. We had some of these last night. These yellow zucchinis, beautifully fried up with some butter, lightly fried. And more cabbage. So you can see how I cram these things in. And they're all growing well, mostly. Let's go through the last half of the veggie garden. This is the water chestnuts. They are meant to die back like this in winter. You can see they're starting to sprout, might start be feeling the warmth of spring coming on. And then they'll just shoot up. I'll probably give it some fertilizer. Speaking of shooting up, in this bed it looks like there's nothing in it, but this is the elephant yam. And the elephant yam goes dormant again, just like other things, through winter, and it'll start sprouting probably mid-spring. I'll put some more soil in here, compost and fertilizer and some rock minerals so that it gets a good start when spring hits. These beds here are from plastic forests. I was speaking to someone the other day who said, "Oh Mark, we followed your advice and we got some of these beds from plastic forests. These are made from recycled plastics." And They said, oh, but they go out of shape. They're not round. This one's they're a bit oblong. And yeah, that's fine. Don't worry about it. I mean, it's not, food gardening, the beauty is in the food that's growing, not what it's growing in. That's what most people care about. If you're, say, got someone over for lunch or a dinner, or you take some food to someone's place, they're not going to ask you what was the bed that it grew in. Did it look really cool? Did it look pretty? Was it a heritage bed? Was it, you know what I mean? So don't worry so much. Just like my DIY crappy jobs, as long as it can grow things, that's the main thing you've got to get in your head, not how it looks, because you can be growing cabbages and veggies and zucchini in an old wheelbarrow and it looks nice. You can be growing it in the ground and it looks great. You could be growing it in an old bathtub and people's stomachs aren't going to turn. You could even probably grow a cabbage in an old toilet and people will think that's cool as long as they see that growing out of it. You know what I mean? So yeah, don't worry too much as long as it's doing the job. And these things are cheap, these beds from plastic forests, but they're also recycled and sustainable. So even when they go out, you can just return them and they get melted back down. But anyway, I like them. In this one here, I'm growing some broccoli. It's a new variety that I got. The bugs are having a good go at it, but hopefully they'll hold on and come through that and get to full size. I don't spray my crops with anything. I just do this if they get attacked. The reason why they probably got a bit weakened was because we had a rodent, a field mice in here chewing down the seedlings, so it put them on the back foot to begin with. This is the same mirrored in this bed here. Broccoli again, that I grew from seed. Starting to come good. This bed here's got nothing in it, just a bit of straw on top. This one here, nothing planned in it, except I noticed that there was this dill growing in it. So I've left the dill in there, and this will probably just turn into dill and maybe a volunteer tomato. I'll probably add some extra fertilizer into this and I'll get rid of the weeds, dig them out properly and put some mulch on and let this dill grow on, so that when we get into cucumber season, we grow a whole ton of cucumbers, we've got the dill there to go with the fermentation process and make our dill pickles. And this bed here is a test bed from Yaguna, and it's just iron that you just stick together. I haven't really shown you guys this before. It's a concept at the moment. They're not actually for sale. So I'm just testing it out for Yaguna. They're easy to put together. They look fairly trendy for those people that do want a trendy looking garden bed. And that's where the marigolds are going to go, in these bottom layers. So you'll have the marigolds around the outside, and in the middle here I'll have a tomato growing up that PVC sort of pipe experiment thing that I've got for extra watering, and also a stake. And then there's radish here as well. And this radish came up in the lawn and I just transplanted it into here. And you've got these volunteer tomatoes that probably came from this pot. That's a leftover experiment that I had last season that is growing from seed again. And it probably some of the seed fell into here, and now I'm just taking advantage of them, and hopefully they'll grow nice and strong. In this bed, we planted some onions, sowed them, none of them came up. They must have been bad seed. It happens sometimes. A bit disappointing, and I've got to work out what else I'm going to plant in there now, that we're too late to plant more onions because the season will then go into summer and they won't survive anyway. So I might consider something, an interim crop, maybe salads that will grow pretty quick in the next 6 weeks that we can harvest and enjoy to make use of this bed. The next one down, the onions did come up. We've got that early Australian brown around the outside, and they're doing pretty good. All coming up, all bunched together. What we're going to do is, if it's too bunched together, we'll harvest them small and let the other ones grow bigger. And the other one is our early white Spanish, and that's around the middle. This next bed along, we've got full of beetroot. There's some gaps where the beetroot didn't come up. This one here's on its lonesome. Probably needs a bit of a water. Yeah, could do with some water. But again, it'll be the same thing. Even though there's some in bunches, I'll harvest them as baby beets, and then we'll let the rest grow on to get bigger. And this bed here is our asparagus bed, and that's why I've got some extra asparagus. Technically, these shouldn't be shooting, but we've had a few warmer winter days, and I think it's coaxed the asparagus into growing, which is not a problem, I suppose. It's just a bit out of season, so I'll let them grow on. But what I usually do at this time of year is I just sort of clear out the whole bed, and I'll put any of the dead materials like dead asparagus ferns, I'll just mulch them back into the bed, and I'll clean up all the weeds, and then I add some extra fertilizer and trace elements to it, maybe some extra soil if need be, and then I mulch over the top and then get that asparagus off to a good start in spring. This next row, the second last, we've got this square birdie's bed, rectangular birdie's bed. Nothing in here at the moment, but I do have some wire that I've been using to put over seedlings, like over there, to stop the mice from eating them. So again a bit of a holding bed. I need to weed it out, but I do have a number of tomatoes coming up here, and I'm not sure what type of tomato it is, but I'm going to transplant them or refurbish this bed and put these tomatoes in here, just keep them in this bed. So that's what I'll probably do with this one. Along here is some taro, which wasn't really the main aim for that bed. I just had some overflow of taro and I put it in there. But what's mainly in this bed is yacon, which has died back because it dies back through winter. But here it is here. And this is it's called ground apple. You can eat it just like that. You can eat it raw. It's very tasty. I like it. It's sweet. It's a substitute for sugar. In a lot of countries they harvest this as a sugar and make sugar out of it. Yeah, it's pleasant. It's good for juicing, making things sweet. It's got good vitamins and minerals in it. So I'll be definitely growing this again. So what I'll probably do is harvest it up and spread it out so it's not coming up in one big clump again over itself. And I'll do that before spring hits. This bed here is where I had the Congo potatoes in. I was showing the Congos coming up before. This is where I first grew the Congos, in here, and they grew pretty well. But there's nothing in it at the moment, so I'll have a think about what I'm going to do and refurbish this bed and what I'm going to put in it. This here is the Atherton Tablein raspberry. It's a really good raspberry. They're actually, most of them are bigger than this. They really taste good. They're like a cross between a mulberry and a raspberry. That taste, I like them, and so does the whole family. Yeah, the thing is, I'm really happy that I grew it in a raised garden bed like this. And now I did a short the other day showing why I did this, because look at how 12 months ago, I planted one cane in here. It was just a small plant right in the center. You look how it's bunched out, and now look how it's sent underneath runners as far away from the stem as it could, and it's butted up against, this is as far as it could go. All around the outside, it's like a cane jail. Check it out. That's the reason why I've contained it, because if you don't, that's just going to keep running on you, and before you know it, it'll be all over your garden. And I just don't want that. As much as I like these raspberries, I don't want my whole garden turning into it. It's a nasty thing to touch though. It's got some terrible thorns on it that you don't want to go near. And that's what keeps all the animals and birds away, so you get the whole harvest to yourself, which is brilliant. That's a loganberry that's just coming up. Here is a heritage raspberry that I thought I'd killed, but it's pretty tough to kill these types of berries. That's a weed. There's the berries. That'll come up in all canes. In here is a cherry that's dormant because of winter. And the reason I'm growing that in a raised bed is because I can control its drainage. Until now, it's been impossible to grow cherries in a warm climate. This particular variety has been bred for warmer climates. This next bed over is a dwarf coconut, which I'm happy. It's still surviving. It's been in there for 18 months, maybe 2 years now. And again, I've grown it in a raised garden bed because I wanted to make sure that the soil in it was sandy, a bit like the beach. And I wanted to control it and keep it well draining. And because it's dwarf, it shouldn't grow too big. And because it's at the back of the veggie garden, it hopefully won't be shading anything out anyway, except for the compost bays, which that one there needs a refurbishing. While I'm talking about compost, that was piled right up with old banana waste and everything, and now it's shrunk all the way down. Looks a bit terrible, but I'm going to line it with recycled plastic, and I'm going to turn that into that next one once I clean it all up. But remember, down the back here, you can see how wet and terrible and boggy it was. It's only starting to recover now, and I can only walk on it properly with normal shoes and boots. Otherwise, before, I had to come in here for the last 5 months with gumboots on. It's taken that long from such a wet summer for it to dry out down the back here. And this last bed here is what not to do, is leave your blueberries go rogue. And so what I'm going to have to do is give these blueberries a good feed, because you can see the plants are suffering, which is normal through winter. They will shed leaves and they will start flowering as spring comes, and then it'll start to come good and start to green up and grow better like this one is here. Having said that, I have been slack and I need to give it a good feed, some more soil and maybe some rock minerals, and I need to do that very soon. This week, especially now that it's starting to flower. De-weed it, because there's a few weeds in here as well, and get that off to a good start so we can get a good crop of blueberries again through our spring. And I might as well go down this way. The bananas are part of our veggie garden, I guess. So these dwarf bananas are getting a little bit too bushy, so I need to trim them out. But they are still producing some great bananas. And yeah, we've been freeze drying them mainly because obviously when you have like a big bunch like that, you try to give some away, but you can't eat them all. You freeze them for smoothies, and we freeze dry them so that you can make nice crunchy healthy snacks out of them. Bananas need a good tidy up, like I said. I need to cull them down. And the last 2 beds here will go around this mulberry tree. This is a white mulberry. Look at it starting to fruit. We've got 2 long raised garden beds that are full of potatoes, as you can see. This one here, if you watched my video on surface laying potatoes, and how that really wasn't a success. Look at that video if you're interested, because even though it wasn't a success, it was quite interesting experiment to do, because there's this craze of, or there's this sort of social media thing that you could grow potatoes on the surface of a garden bed and just put straw over the top, and then they would come out clean when you went to harvest them. So I went through that experiment and didn't work out that well, and I grew a whole lot of small potatoes, and we did eat a lot of them, but I kept the smallest ones and we transplanted them back into this long raised garden bed for the next season. So I just kept them, over summered them, and then when the weather cooled down a bit and it was the right time of year for potatoes, I planted them, but this time I buried them. So we're going to see how they go. There's no mulch at all. So it's going to be a complete opposite experiment, and we'll see which one's best. And in this one, they are just store-bought potatoes, and they've gone green, and all I've done is I've sparsely planted them. So I've sowed these, they're not seed potatoes, they're just store-bought potatoes that, like I said, have gone green and started to sprout. But I've planted them fairly sparsely to see if that would create better tubers than close together. And on this other bed here, a lot of small ones, I planted them very close together because I wasn't sure if all of them would make it. So I filled this whole bed up, and some of the plants or seed potatoes are only that far apart. But anyway, well, that could be the other type of experiment. A, do store potatoes grow well? And B, is planting them away from each other, does that produce a bigger crop perhaps? Not sure. And now let's have a look over, like I said, at the last area, which is these potted plants here, just along this edge of the shed. Here we've got a little fig tree. It's dormant. I'm saying dormant a lot, aren't I? Because it's true. A lot of these things are dormant at this time of year, and they only come good in our spring. It's kind of weird because you can grow something all year round, but you just can't grow everything all year round. But in the base of this fig, growing here in this half barrel, is this banana mint. Now, it really does smell like a banana smoothie. And that minty, it's still got a minty flavour to it though, and smell, but it's not as pungent as regular mint. It's a beautiful mint. And again, it's starting to come good now because it's the cooler months, and it takes a while for it to come good, and it'll bloom its best in spring, and then when summer hits it'll start dying back again. By the time the season is done, it will completely take over this bed and it'll be hanging over the edge. Here I've got some, speaking of mint, I've got some native mint or basil. This is a native, very pungent, not very nice I don't think. You'd have to use it in very small quantities, but I got some to try it, and by jingoes, it'd be difficult to put in cooking. But it is a native bush tucker plant. Moving along, we've got my collection of pineapples that I'm yet to plant out. I've got to plant them out soon. What I generally do is we have pineapples, you know, in the yard, and we harvest them, and then I cut the top off, and then I bring it down here, and my aim is to plant them as soon as possible. But some of these have been sitting there for 6 months or more. Nothing, just in nothing. And I just give them the tops of water every now and again, and it keeps them moist, and yeah, plant them out eventually when I get a chance. This is some aloe vera. I've used that a few times in the last 12 months to cure some sunburn when I've been fishing or been out in the garden without a hat, because I'm an idiot. And here are some small banana plants. These are all, you know, saplings, clones from these other 2 big banana plants here. And these are growing in containers or bags. These are called super dwarf bananas. So they're not dwarf, they're super dwarf. And I'm looking forward to hopefully getting a few bunches out of them. And when I do that, I'll be able to bring you a video. It's always These long-term videos are worth it, but they take ages. But I wanted to demonstrate growing bananas in containers and having them fruit, and so that's what I want to do. And then once that happens and we get right to the fruit stage and taste it and it was a success, hopefully, I can bring you that video. Moving down are a bunch of trees, some lychees, lychees, several of them that I'm yet to plant. There's one of those potato onions that I'm just growing in a container, and we'll see if that can fill that container out over time. And I'll plant these fruit trees out soon. Here's a strawberry that I grew from seed. It's an alpine strawberry, but it actually grows quite large. This is probably one of the biggest alpine strawberries I've ever grown. And I sought that out online at testing different varieties, and finally found one that actually is truly bigger than usual. Alpine strawberries are usually very small and hardly worth growing, but this size alpine variety is worth growing, and I'll bring you that video too down the track. Some olives that I've just purchased. The olives over here, a lot of them are going to get cut out. I've grown them for 15 years, a lot of them haven't fruited ever. So there's no use growing things if you're not using them. It's taking up space and nutrients in the garden and sunlight. So these olives apparently do fruit really well in the subtropics. They're purposely bred for that, and I finally found some, and so I'm going to plant them out and see if we can get some fruit off them. Again, some more pineapples, bit of sweet potato. This is just a few experiments I've been running in here. I might as well tell you about this. They're not going to make it, but what I was trying to do is divide a pineapple head up into 4 and try to get 4 plants out of it. I think I got a bit greedy. I might try 2 next time and see if I can get 2 plants out of the one head, and we'll see how we go. But that's what that experiment is. And speaking of experiments, the last thing I want to show you is this here. Now, remember how I showed you the potatoes that got snipped off by the cockatoos over there? Well, I've taken those cuttings and I've planted them in here. So the idea is, can you grow potatoes from stem cuttings? And we'll see if we can. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure you give it a big thumbs up, comment below so I can see if it's really, truly worth doing. And obviously I'll probably see by the number of views on the video too. Well, anyway, it's getting into a bit of a protracted ending. Thanks a lot for watching. Bye for now. Cheers. Cheers.